So my name is Noah Bacon. I run, supposedly, as Executive Director of Preservation Quest. We are a video game um, history, preservation, and empowerment nonprofit. Our goals are um, I'm going to have to keep the slide pane open. Our goals are to, well, one, you'll hear in a second, to tell the stories of video games and of their communities, to use video games for the betterment of humanity, and to save every video game ever. So I'm here to talk to you about Tripping Through the Muds, which is a project that is meant to, the best kind of preservation is when you have something alive and active that people can participate in. And MUDs are also known as multi-user dungeons, were the first MMORPGs. We're talking about Zork level text games, as well as the online component that was brand new at the time and very much novel. So these games, and I've talked to people who've developed them since the 80s, have been around. If you know about old mainframes, like the PDB-11s, had the first Star Trek game. Star Trek wasn't a MUD, but it was an interactive text adventure. And that's an interesting story because they actually charged people to play it. It had the giant PDB-11 up in the attic of this bar in, I think it was at MIT, and they had the terminal running down. So text adventures have been with us for quite a while in many forms, and you may find it surprising. There are active servers and games under development still. As of this screenshot from MudStats, which sadly has gone offline, as of early this year, there were 771 active MUDs, active multi-user dungeons, with a total of 9,121 players. These two screens, you can see some stats. One is total players connected by genre. We have fantasy, furry, adult, social, World of Darkness, sci-fi unknown, superhero, and some other ones such as Star Trek, Pokemon, Naruto, and My Little Pony, which is where my heart is. So these games are not just significant to history as a whole, but they're also active, even though they've been around since the 80s. Some of these have a legacy and pedigree that can be traced through time very distinctly. So what is Project Tripping Through the Muds? It is the active preservation through keeping these games alive with their player base and enabling people to spin up new instances at will. So this presentation, I kind of struggled with the technical side. One, I'm not sure if I spelled Kubernetes correctly. And two, the project itself, delving into technical details is pretty cool. But what it comes down to is containers and Talos OS. And let me talk about this. So one, let's start calling containers crates. I don't know, anyone? No, okay. But there's a couple pieces to this. One, there is the containers, whether that is Kubernetes, Docker, or contained within a Talos OS instance. So I guess the progression here would be the Kubernetes system, Talos OS, and a container which contains a MUD and all the configuration, as well as port connections, everything that's open. And this is solving a pretty crucial issue with the mud communities. I think this might be a little small, but it takes around, I think, 30 to 50 steps to just deploy one individual instance of one game when it comes to MUDs. And this is something I've talked to a few of the developers behind about this, and they were proud of the fact it only took 50 steps. So regarding what it takes to preserve a MUD and deploy it in a containerized format, we have to we have to think about not just the Kubernetes and Talos OS and Docker instances, but also the configuration for the individual games. And that is where the brunt of the work that we're going to be doing is going to be taking place. So, but that's the technical breakdown. And I'm going to talk a bit more, but I want to focus on the Kubernetes piece as well. So what Talos OS does here, which is magical, is we can create a template of a MUD. So we have the containerized version in the Talos OS instance that we can deploy at will. That means what we're able to do is someone can come to, go to a website, click on a game, and it automatically spins up a Talos OS instance. Since they are immutable, that means nothing can be changed in the configuration, or more concisely, nothing needs to be changed between instances. And so the way we've been developing this, and we had an I think the unofficial Talos OS evangelist talk to us about this, is the fact that the IP is random. We can have a public IPv4 or even IPv6 address and just have each instance as a port for connection. So we have we can have ports 1 through 2, 3, 5,000 dedicated to this. And so when we spin them up automatically, and like I said, the concept here is that we can eliminate to a large degree these 50 steps. We only need to do it once as opposed to doing it over and over again. And there are scripts that do this. However, each game is very, very finicky. We have, some of these run through emulation layers, so not just Wine, but we're talking some of this stuff is written in Fortran. Some of this stuff is written in C, C++, Pascal, if anyone remembers that, and, Python. So there's a gambit here. And what this does with Talos OS being able to spin up, deploy, and run containers at will is we are able to remove what has been 99.9999% of the effort into this. So one of my things about video game preservation is there's two questions. One, why should someone care? That's the hardest question to answer. But the other one, which feeds into that, is how do you make this as accessible as possible? We have, we're talking about history sometimes. It can sound rusty. It can sound, it's a museum. But with this sort of system that's enabled by Talos OS and the containerized format, we're able to make it at will. You can connect to a game through a myriad of clients. I think there's at least 30 of them themselves. I counted 18 that are under active development. So you can go to a website, deploy, or choose, and you're playing right away. And sincerely, that is what Talos OS enables. It enables this very much non-intuitive application. And I know, we talk about immutability as a security feature. We talk about, not needing to really customize the OS image itself unless you want to harden it even further. But, the applications thereof mean that we can create a crystallized and non-changeable format for these sorts of server-based applications, and including video games. Like, we are building up our infrastructure through with Talos OS and Kubernetes, and we're looking forward to the fact we can just deploy Nextcloud, or we can deploy Jira, or we can deploy whatnot, and it's just done, including updates, which is another big part of the mud scene, is that compatibility does break. And what I was trying to encapsulate as part of this is the fact that there are active players. And a lot of the times when a mud goes down, or when it breaks, or when some server layer changes, those are like 100+ players who can't access a game they've been playing for at least 30 years sometimes. Maybe 5, maybe 10, maybe 2, maybe 1. But the fact is, Talos OS gives us an actual mechanism to enable ongoing preservation and power behind the individual who wants to play these, because they're the ones who are keeping these games alive. And I guess in summary, Talos OS is the technology that enables this. There's nothing else like it. And we've been stellarly using it. Like, we're excited to deploy it. We're moving cron jobs for the mud thing over to it as well. I mean, we have a whole basic infrastructure that's being slowly developed. But I wanted to touch on the broad strokes here. Anyway, as you can tell, I'm pretty enamored of Talos, because it's enabling us to do things we wouldn't be able to, like 3 or 4 years ago, not without a lot of pain and development. We have like maybe 2 volunteers on this, and we can always use more help. So, I don't know. In summary, 1, please start calling containers crates. And 2, you know what? Talos OS, and we're busy saving every video game ever. So, short and sweet. I wanted to thank everyone for their time. And, we're doing some cool stuff only because the people in our team. And I like to end my spiels saying that I am not Preservation Quest. The people whose signatures you see also are not Preservation Quest. Preservation Quest is them. If it weren't for them, we wouldn't be running these projects. We wouldn't have the motivation. We wouldn't have the expertise. We have a team of people from all over the world who are passionate and care so much about this, like the people who are still playing MUDs and want to see those thrive. So the fact is, Talos OS enables a ton of cool stuff. That's my TED Talk.
Awesome.
Please subscribe to our newsletter.
No, I'm not sure you probably can't hear me still.
I'm having some audio issues. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all I got. Do I click on leave?
Yeah, you could click on leave.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.